Alright guys, so today we're going to take a look at Ryomen Sukuna, and with the epic battle between him and Gojo going underway very recently, what we can actually start to take a look at now is some of the in-game or the final attacks these guys are going to pull out midway or in the latter parts of the fight. Now, one of the important things to take away from this is that Sukuna has not unleashed his divine arsenal, and it looks like he has abilities that are going to come into play much later. Now, of course, Gojo has his own abilities that are going to come into play, but we're going to carry that out and start to dissect that a little bit more in a different video. But the important thing we're going to realize is that he has at least two weapons and maybe even a third that I want to cover that's going to allow him to take over and defeat Gojo. Now, the important thing to look at is Sukuna's divine spear. Now, Trishula, the spear that looks like a large, kind of rounded end weapon, is actually shown in multiple instances, but is more so just given some kind of lore and background. It isn't really or explicitly stated to be a weapon that he uses, but I do believe that we're going to find out because he has realized his 20 finger form. Now, in this 20 finger form, it looks like he has pretty much all the things he had back in his old or golden age self. But what we can also start to see is that he's really taking into account some of the things he had back in the day and what's going to give him the best chance against Gojo. Now, when we start to take a look at this, we're actually going to find out whether Sukuna does start to pull out these weapons in the oncoming chapters or whether he saves it for the very, very end of the fight. But we're going to take a look at his divine spear, Trishula, okay? Now, Trishula comes from a bit of an Indian lore and a bit of a Hindu background, and we've seen some Hindu lore actually given in the series a few times, and this is mainly when Kenjaku actually summons an elephant that is shown to be and comes from a Hindu and religious background. Now, taking a look at Trishula, it's a weapon that essentially can pretty much one-shot a lot of demons in that lore, and the goddess Durga actually takes and uses the spear to pretty much one-shot a lot of those demons. Now, it's something that's said to be kept in holy ground, and really just it is an OP weapon for all intents and purposes. It's a spear that can cut through pretty much anything, and it's in lore killed a lot of different demons and enemies. But here, it's probably just an OP, very powerful weapon that Sukuna's going to use to neg some of Gojo's abilities. And when he starts to neg, it's going to become a weapon he really needs to stay away from. Something like the inverted Spear of Heaven, right? And if Toji had weapons on that level that could neg Gojo's curse techniques, I'd imagine Sukuna, who seems to be the strongest villain in the story, is going to have a weapon that's much, much more powerful. So the next thing we're going to look at, and it's a weapon that was actually introduced a bit earlier and used on Jogo in small part. It's the Brahmashira Astra, and it's a projectile weapon, something like a bow and arrow. Now, it's not consistent as to how JJK might actually interpret a projectile weapon here, but what we're getting and what seems to be the case is a small bow and arrow, and it ends up looking like a fire arrow. So when Sukuna uses it earlier against Jogo, he actually uses his fingers to perform a bow and arrow movement and then releases and shoots it. So after he does this, what we actually get and end up with is a very destructive and powerful attack that is known in history and lore to actually destroy the ground or the earth that was actually hit by its attack for up to 12 years, leaving no life and no signs of any type of life. Essentially making sure this ground is barren, poisonous, and can't be served to utilize any living organisms for up to 12 years. Now, I'm not sure if this ability is going to be as powerful as it is in lore, but it is one that we need to keep a lookout for Sukuna to use. Now, Sukuna does this with a fire variant earlier. I'm not sure if he can change the curse technique type or matchup later, but what we have seen is a small dose of it earlier, and it's one I'd imagine Sukuna may come back and even use again on Gojo. And lastly, the thing we want to take a look at is the weapon that Sukuna got from Yorozu. Now, this is one that's immediately given to him within the last few chapters as soon as he defeats her, right? So it makes much more sense, and I think this is the most likely weapon that's going to be pulled out, is whatever he received from her. Now, she has a powerful technique. She used her true sphere and believed it was even going to one-shot Sukuna. And there's a chance that even if it hit him, if he didn't adapt earlier, he may have not only been damaged, but even possibly died from it. So what he receives from Yorozu is something like a new weapon that we just have no clue what it is, but we can speculate. For Sukuna uses cutting weapons, and with those he probably receives some kind of sword, dagger, spear, and it looks like that's probably what she gave him, because she is in love with Sukuna and knows his preferences for weaponry. And so he probably ended up with something that was either just a blade that he could use immediately, or something that he can take to his battle with Gojo. And it's something she probably believes will be able to damage the strongest sorcerers, because one, she's fought Sukuna directly, two, she's seen him at his strongest, and so she has an idea of the kind of people he would need to use a weapon against, and it would be something that's on their caliber. So if this is the case, it looks like she's probably providing him with something that we're going to see in these next few chapters that helps him to gain an upper hand on Gojo. So that's all the weapon theories we have so far. We're going to look ahead at Gojo in the next video. But if you guys enjoyed the video and want to see more JJK content about theories, understanding, curse techniques, etc., come back, like, sub the channel, and we'll be back with more content you guys want to hear.